I've got three topics that aren't separate topics, but just kind of three notes that I want responses from concerning what we saw against Utah State, and just see what you guys have to say. And you may have addressed. I'm guessing you've addressed two of the three during the post game show, but Jayden Maiava, his performance, 8 of 11. Is there anything that we can take from that? Did he have to make any difficult throws, anything like that, that makes you more confident? If I would love to see somebody run the numbers on this at some point, how many teams make it through an entire season without losing their starting quarterback for at least one game? Meaning you may need a bridge for 1 or 2 games, hopefully not more. But how confident are you that Maiava can carry this team against a mid-tier Big Ten team?
He's a different core. I mean, so watching Miller play and seeing how he's played, there's clear separation between the 1 and 2. But if we had a situation where Miller got hurt, what we saw from Jayden, in the spring and the fall, and then now into actually playing a little bit of mop up time. I'm not sure, Mark, if you caught that play that he had where he did his best, like Caleb Williams impersonation, just dipping and dunking guys and then just using his athleticism and speed to get into the end zone. I mean, that's what you're gaining, with Maiava. I think that the offense would look completely different. It would, that read options just on the table full on. I mean, it's going to be that would be used, I believe, a lot. Although I don't know. I don't know, because you're probably gonna want to protect him in that situation when Jake Jensen's awesome, but I don't know if we want to go to that third level and feel as confident as we would with of Maiava. But he just showed me that he's a very talented quarterback, and he's comfortable in Riley's system, and then he'd be able to do well. And I think it would just be a different flavor of this offense. I would be very curious to see it. I'm very happy with what Miller Moss is doing, but if Miller were to go down for a game like you're talking about, I do believe, remember that season when we had Mark Sanchez come in, when Booty hurt his hand. I mean, that was catastrophic. You want to have a guy that can come in and can win that game, and beat Notre Dame if needed called on. So yeah, I feel confident that he is that guy, but let's just hope it never happens.
I think one note to make about Maiava from the Utah State game is, a year ago, the defense was so shaky under Alex Grinch that USC didn't put some games away until the fourth quarter. I mean, and some games were tense all the way through to the very end. But because the defense would give up 17 or 24, 27 points, in the games where garbage time, mop-up time was supposed to be given to the backup, that didn't happen until the fourth quarter. In this game, the team put things away, put things to bed so quickly that Maiava was able to enter the game midway through the third quarter when it was 34-0. So like Maiava played a quarter and a half. He wasn't just playing 2 possessions. He got several looks at the ball. So like that's more than a little bit of playing time and experience. And with his speed, and he certainly, as Tim said, it was like Caleb Williams with his pocket presence on that touchdown. Just the fact that he got in a lot of work against Utah State, like that in itself bodes well if he has to come in a break glass in case of emergency type situation. So, I definitely think that, against Minnesota, yeah, if you need Jayden Maiava for that Minnesota game, he'd win that. The Maryland game, I think he'd win that. Maryland losing at home to Michigan State. Maryland's secondary looks awful. So I think USC, I'm more optimistic that trap game, and the kickoff time hasn't been announced yet, but that could be one of those nooners, 9 a.m. Pacific time. It could be a body clock special. I'm feeling a little bit better about that Maryland game now than I did before the season. I thought Maryland might be a little tricky, and still could be. But like from what I saw against Michigan State, Maryland's pass defense not going to cut it. So I think Jayden Maiava could win that game. Rutgers would be a tougher test. Rutgers' physicality, Greg Schiano scheming on defense, that could be a little bit of a minefield. And Nebraska, similarly. But there's no doubt that Jayden Maiava would slash and burn UCLA. And by the way, just as a quick aside, Indiana's favored by only 3 points against UCLA. Boy, gosh, I would say Indiana should be favored by 6.5. Like, that's being undervalued by a field goal. Like the Cignetti steamroller, that team is going places. UCLA is not going places. So anyway, Maiava would torch UCLA right now if USC played the Bruins.
And we didn't get to see it, but he has a very live arm. I mean, the one issue, I've heard Gabe at Trojan Blade talk about it. The one issue he had last year when he was at UNLV is his decision making could be very questionable. But we have him working with Lincoln Riley in Lincoln Riley's system, a system that's very quarterback friendly. So, I mean, that could change that issue as well.
I already sent Matt his 12 pack of predictions to send back. I did not include the Indiana trip to the Rose Bowl, but Matt loving the Hoosiers here.
Lock of the week, stone cold.
Here's another response I would like to get out of you guys, whether this is truly concerning, but I saw tons of comments to our channel. So you've obviously already addressed it to a certain extent, but the dropped passes.
There were a couple easy touchdowns that were dropped. One in the flat to right in front of me to Zachariah Branch. I know he knows is just a routine catch and step right into the end zone for him. That you know, I'm sure he wants back. That one was just really, I mean, let's face it, it's probably inexcusable. And then Jacoby Lane, same thing. You know, a ball. I don't know, those big old hands just at the goal line, just thinking about getting that touchdown instead of just catching the ball and just kind of falling into the end zone. There's you know, Miller Moss hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns because his receivers have made some great catches. And then they've been dropping balls in the end zone, really not helping him out. But that'll come around. I mean, that's just early mental errors. The receiving thing that I'm excited about is just how much, and we can get into this a little bit later, is just the use of Lake McCree and the tight ends. I mean, that's just opened up this offense, and not just in the passing game, but yeah, I like when they're in that 12 personnel, and we had Eldridge at the H-back, and then you had Lake McCree lined up as a fullback, and then you have Eldridge and Noah just kind of come across, and you just saw Quentin Joyner just waltz right in with that lane for a touchdown. Just great play call. Big dudes out moving, big athletic dudes out in space moving. It's just really nice to see the way that the tight ends are being used, not just in the passing game, which has been gorgeous to see in those seam routes and stuff, but really just watching how they're blocking, and that's really gonna. We've only seen part of the offense. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it in 2 Saturdays from now.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to what Tim brought up, there was another play. This was a deep ball. Now, Miller Moss did underthrow the deep ball, so that has to be mentioned. You know, Miller Moss has not had great touch on his deep ball just yet, but Mekhi Lemon, he did have his hands on the ball. Now, the Utah State defender did recover, and he brought the hand through to rake the ball loose. But we saw this with Kyron Hudson against LSU. The ball's on his hands, the defender's coming over his shoulder through his body and raking the ball loose. I mean, you give the defender credit for not giving up on the play by all means. And you say, hey, good defensive effort there. But you know what? At some point, the receivers, and this is a basketball term, need to box out. You need to be ball strong, and you need to bring that sucker in. So 2 straight weeks, we've seen the ball get on the hands, and then it gets raked loose. USC receivers will need to be stronger with the ball. And of course, going into the big house in Ann Arbor, you know, getting a 7 instead of a 3, probably going to matter at some point. And so, you know, it's a definite point of criticism. The receivers were the worst unit on the field. I mean, the rest of the team played pretty well. So it's not as though they were objectively bad, but they were definitely worse than all the other units if you were going to compare them. But the good news is, like, it was never going to matter against Utah State. But again, starting with Michigan, it's going to matter. And we need to see this wide receiver room really step it up and make more of those contested catches that haven't been consistently brought down through the first 2 weeks.
I think Matt's playing the least attractive supermodel game because it's kind of hard. Yeah, it's not like the wide receivers played poorly. It's just the fact that the running backs rushed for 249 yards, and Miller Moss did what Norman Moss does, and the tight ends look great. But talk about Lemon. Lemon had that great play, the only touchdown catch of the game, where you get him the ball with just a little bit of space, and he's near the goal line. He just makes it happen. He's kind of special when it comes for finding a third down, getting those sticks, or getting into the end zone. He just has a way, once he gets the ball in his hands, just to get those extra yards.
Okay, here's my next point. Not necessarily just on the Utah State game, but I sit here and watch. I can only focus on 2 games, but I throw on as many games as I can. So I'm sitting here noon Eastern, 3:30 prime time, and I got 3 games on all the time. I'm trying to watch as much football as possible. So I watch as much football as I possibly can. So I probably watch as much Mississippi State football as anybody outside of the Magnolia State. Woody Marks, I've seen this guy play a lot of football, but it's not like I was focused on, let's evaluate Woody Marks. How good is he? Now I'm sitting there on Saturday, and between the Ohio State duo, the Penn State duo, Jaquindon Jackson, former Utah back at Arkansas, had a remarkable game against Oklahoma State. He looked awfully impressive. I'm just wowed at these various running backs across the country. Dylan Sampson at Tennessee, a lot of really good talent, where I'm just amazed at what these guys can do, breaking tackles in the open field and so forth. And then I look at the USC box score, and I just thought, I'm going to ask Matt and Tim, what is your fair evaluation of what level of back is Woody Marks?
You want me to go first, Matt, or why don't you go first?
USC didn't run block all that well against LSU. Run blocked a lot better against Utah State, as you would expect. But I like Woody Marks' burst. What I really like, north and south. Like he is not a hesitant runner. He gets through that main gap. He explodes. He's decisive. So that's a good early sign that he's trying to get as many forward yards as possible. Raleek Brown, what was his problem, right? He would dance around. He wouldn't make the right cut, the right read. He took too much time to process plays, make decisions. You're not seeing that with Woody Marks. He is very decisive. His one really big mistake so far this season was that lateral against LSU. Fortunately, USC recovered, but the game really could have blown up if LSU had recovered that. I think he got the message. He didn't do any dumb stuff against Utah State. So really, as long as he's not making weird plays as he did against LSU, he looks like a keeper. I would also say that Quentin Joyner looks like he's going to continuously get his share of carries. Well, that's one thing I really like about the running back room in general. They're not overloading the RB1 the way they did with Travis Dye, the way they did with Marshawn Lloyd. Right now, it's really a two-man show. And you saw Brian Jackson get a little bit of work, and Amarian Peterson as well, scoring the touchdown in mop-up time. It's good that they got some carries. But when the game is in the first half, and the main rotations are unfolding on the field, it's a 2-man setup, not a 1-man setup. That's encouraging, and I hope we see more of that. I hope we see both Marks and Joyner, get at least 12, 15 touches respectively against Michigan, so that USC can throw Michigan a change of pace.
And that's why, if you guys remember, we did our prediction show, we were talking about, are we going to see a 1,000-yard rusher? That's why I was quick to say no, but not because we couldn't. It's because he's going to be splitting a lot with Quentin Joyner. I've been talking about Quentin Joyner since last year, since the spring game where we were, and since that San Jose State game. He's the guy also, Matt, like you're saying, just, plant his foot, one cut and go. And he's gone because he really can break those angles. He is fast and big. And talking about fast and big, like you said, Brian Jackson and Amarian Peterson just showed he can bang too. There's a lot of talent in the running back room, and I'm comfortable going up against pretty much anybody I mean, I know some great backs, and Ohio State, brought in Judkins, and he's a great back. But I don't think we take much of a step back with the backs that we have, to be honest.